Hello and welcome to our webinar today. Thank you for joining. We will be talking about leveling up your manufacturing with digital production records. Before we get started, I want to go over a couple housekeeping items. If you have any technical difficulties, please use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll work with you as quickly as we can to get that resolved. If you have any questions during the presentation today, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we can answer those questions when we get a chance. Let me share my screen here. Okay. My name is Luke Anderson, and I will be here with Tom Campbell. He's one of our excellent senior solutions consultants. And today we're going to focus on ensuring how quality can be infused into your manufacturing process without slowing down your productions on the shop floor. So we'll dive into how you can digitize your production record with MasterControl Manufacturing Excellence, or MX, allowing you to eliminate the manual data entry errors, provide greater product lifecycle visibility, and improve your resource visualization and integrate quality on your production floor. MasterControl, as a background, is a company that's been around for about 30 years, and we are the gold standard in quality management systems. We have been a leader and established ourselves in the life science industry and work with companies from pharmaceuticals to biomed device to med device and everything in between. We are a validated SaaS solution, which means that we're based on the web, on the cloud. And with that solution comes great flexibility and configurability. And one of the great things that we like to highlight is we are used by the FDA. So companies that are being audited and have the FDA, the familiarity with MasterControl is already assumed and understood by the FDA. In the agenda today, we want to cover the idea of modern digital manufacturing. And we'll take a deep dive into what our electronic batch record system is through a demo with Tom. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A discussion. In a standard manufacturing environment, we come across three different types of environments. The typical one we hear a lot about still, even in 2023, is a paper-based system. Now, when you're working with paper, of course, it's easy to use it as flexible, but it can create problems. It's very manual, it's limited. There's errors that are prone to being able to enter in bad information or missing data. And it can lead to bad results in the manufacturing process. In a point solution type of environment, that's an inexpensive way to be able to address sort of a system where you have different types of data systems or information gathering systems. Sometimes people use things like Excel, or they might be using Word, but they're all disconnected. They're not combined together to give you a combined solution that will deliver what you need from a manufacturing excellence perspective. And then, of course, you have legacy MES systems. These are very, traditional MES is very cumbersome to implement. It's very expensive. It's timely. It's very rigid. When you need to make changes, you typically need to grab resources from your IT or from the manufacturer itself. And so these options that are out there aren't really delivering what the market needs. And we wanted to be able to address that with a solution that's more flexible and configurable. Now, in a recent survey we took last year, we asked manufacturing leaders within life sciences some of these challenges that they're facing. And you can see here on the screen some of these options that, some of these challenges that you're running into with manual process inefficiencies, like these different siloed production systems, a lot of human entry error that comes from data entry on paper that leads to scrap and waste. There's a lot of things that are cumbersome in the current system that we are seeing and reported in our survey that are looking to be addressed. Enter into the scene MasterControl's MX solution. MasterControl is 100% digital. So we can help eliminate the need to be on paper at all. We can use within the confines of our quality management system a complete digital electronic batch record system as well. We can take all the digital SOPs or work instructions and infuse them into the batch record to be able to give you that complete visibility between and connectivity to your quality management system in manufacturing. This, of course, gives you absolute insights and visibility into the production floor, and you could be able to have that data reported out. It allows you to be also able to control the quality that's online by having your training that's infused, so you can have your documents that the operators can access, and then you can also access training records or training modules to be able to make sure each person on the production line is properly trained and create a record of that that's auditable when you have audits. And then, of course, toward the end, one of our goals or our mission of our company is to help get products to the market sooner. We want to help all of our customers, and so we have what we call review by exception, which allows our systems to be able to provide the digitized way of entering in the data and eliminate a lot of the confusion or the gaps that come with paper-based systems by having a system that can digitize it for you and give you a result that you can just check to make sure very quickly by a review by exception process. When you're talking about MasterControl's MX solution, there's two things that we like to highlight. One is the flexibility. Of course, when you're talking about software, the question comes up, is this a hard code or is this a heavy lift from my IT team? The answer is no. This is a no-code solution that can really replace the need for a legacy MES type solution and come up with a modern MES type solution with what we offer. What this allows is you to be able to have connectivity as well. So we can have the electronic batch record tied to the quality management system, and that's a native integration. But we can also expand beyond that into other solutions like an ERP, like a LIM system, like other weights and scales, and that can all be automatically delivered into the electronic batch record system, and then it can be reported on the other side, making there fewer touches and better automation within the entire system. The great thing about our solution, because it is so configurable and it's a SaaS-based solution, is you can implement it very quickly. We have customers that are implementing our EBR solution within 4 weeks. We can be able to have the whole QMS and EBR solution implemented, so you can have a fully digitized system, and then you can go completely paperless. We have customers that are doing it as fast as 6 months. The value that you'll see on the production floor is, from a quality stance, you can reduce the amount of time that goes into your EBR creation. So our patented solution allows you to create that in less than an hour, your template. And the ripple effect it has on the production line is, now they have people that have fewer data entry errors. You're going to improve your operational efficiency, which is going to reduce the number of deviations that you have. And like I mentioned before, a faster review time, and ultimately getting your products out the door sooner with shorter lead times. To give you kind of a high-level look, we have both companies that have under 100 operators and over 100 operators. You can see here on this screen that you can see the initial payback of your investment into making a better solution and moving off of paper to a digitized system with MasterControl. You can see significant savings that could be projected into long-term savings. These are real numbers that, as a salesperson, I present to companies, and we work with companies all the time to help develop an ROI. And then we look at what the projected future impact would be by implementing MX or an EBR solution from MasterControl into your operations. And it's something we could do for everybody on a case-by-case basis. At a high level, we have several companies in different verticals, and you can see here how it's phased between. You saw Almac with the intro video. We also have companies like Pfizer, BioBridge, Carestream. Across the life science industry, we have people that are doing things from process development and clinical manufacturing, all the way through commercial manufacturing and packaging operations. Now, I think it's an appropriate time here to pivot to give the time to Tom, and he can walk you through a live demo. He'll take the majority of the time, and then, like I mentioned before, if you have any questions, please enter them into the chat, and I'll be keeping an eye on that, and we can answer those toward the end of the call. Thanks, Tom.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Luke. Hi, everybody. Tom Campbell, MA Solutions Consultant here at MasterControl. I'm going to be sharing my screen, and we're going to go through a sample demo of a production record in the MX module. So what I've got here on my screen is, this is basically the suite of modules that MasterControl provides. We're going to be focusing on the MX, or Manufacturing Excellence solution here today. We're going to see a couple callbacks to our legacy QMS, which we call Quality Excellence, or QX. So we're going to see a couple examples of that today as well. So we're going to hop on over here to the production record creation screen, and I just want to highlight how quick and easy it is to launch a production record. We only need a few key pieces of information, and then we can jump right into the record. So we select our master template here, and as Luke mentioned, it's a no-code solution to build it's just it's highly configurable, super easy to use, no code, to build the content in the master template. In this case, we've got a template that I've called Wonder Therapeutic today. It's revision L. Revisioning is always tracked dynamically, so you don't have to actively track revisions as you go through changes. I know that's hugely important from a regulatory perspective. But you can see here we've got Wonder Therapeutic revision L. We'll go ahead and select that template, and that's what we're going to be manufacturing to today in this example. You'll see that as I selected that master template, a lot number was automatically assigned. Now, this is a highly configurable field, much like all of MX. That's kind of the first theme that we're going to see throughout MX, is that everything is basically configurable to your needs. But in this case, the lot number is adhering to a numbering series that I've configured on for this particular template, but this is highly customizable based on what your needs. This is also a great first touch point for what we call integrations, and we're going to see some examples of how MasterControl can connect to other systems as we go through the template. But at this first stage, for the lot number, a lot of our customers benefit by integrating this field with up and downstream customer requirements. So you can force alignment of your templates, of your records, with your up and downstream customers' requirements as well. So there's a lot of flexibility around this field. It's important to note that MasterControl does not allow duplicate lot numbers in the system at all. So even if you attempted to manually enter a lot number that already existed, the system wouldn't even allow that. So very, very strong functionalities right out of the gate from a regulatory perspective. The quantity field, this just allows scalability for the records, so we can have calculations, and some of the fields that we're going to see in a minute in the demo adjust dynamically and automatically based on this quantity. In this case, we're just going to call it one because we're making one component today, or one product. But important to keep in mind, we can scale these records to minimize the number of records that we need to manage by just adjusting a couple key fields. So that's all the information I need to create the record. We'll go ahead and create that record. And now we're brought into the queue of records. You can see we've got some previous records from previous samples that we've run through here, but what we've got today is our NX1038. That's the sample lot number that we've created. And we're going to see a couple of themes kind of continue to play out as we go through. The first one I'll call traction of the progress. And because we're in this digital space, we have a lot of flexibility, or a lot of capability really to track our progress as we're going through. We can see that the status is open, the steps complete is 0%. This will all adjust dynamically as we proceed through the record. The next theme that I want to highlight here is automatic date time and username stamping. So you can see the issuance date was automatically produced, and we're going to see that theme play out throughout the record as well. So if we come into the record that we're going to run through today, NX1038, again, as our example, we're going to hang here for just a minute to revisit or to visit a couple of these themes that we've talked about. The traction of the progress really being the big one at this stage, where from a high level, let's say you're a supervisor, maybe manager, or even just in operations, and you want to check in on the progress in a certain record. We have a few different views to do that. So you don't have to sort through a bunch of pages and find on page 38, where is the team? We can come right to this view and check in and see where the progress is. So open jobs shows you basically all the open jobs that are still pending completion. And they are also linked, so it will take you directly to that section of the record. So you don't have to go find where that is. The accountability page, I mentioned automatic date time username stamping as a big theme. From a signatures perspective, anybody who executes to anything in the record, their signature will be collected here at the top of the record. Their credentials are also stamped at the point of work, as we're going to see as we go through and execute this sample record. But from a high level, if you just want to see everybody that's associated with the record, MasterControl tracks that automatically. We talked a little bit about the connection back to the legacy QMS, and this is kind of the first example where we see that to the documents module. We can see we've got a sample SOP here in this MasterControl demo environment called MX packaging. You can see where it's referenced. It's referenced in this workstation line clearance area. And it's important to know here that we can collect all those documents from a high level to see. You don't have to go in and sort through page by page to understand which SOPs are referenced. So from things like an audit perspective, if you want to see which documents are associated with which records, really powerful, fast way to kind of see all of that information right at the high level. And then forms. We haven't launched any forms here today yet, but if you have things like a CAPA or deviation or maybe equipment maintenance items that have to get launched, we can launch forms, customizable forms from each and any step throughout the record. And anytime a form is launched, the high-level information and the link to that form will be tracked here as well. So again, it's really all about streamlining the flow of work, bringing things forward to the point of work, and we do that here with this accountability page kind of right off the top. Lastly, here on the traction of progress, the activity log is essentially the audit log for the production record, and it will track every single thing that happens in the record chronologically. You can also sort these fields as well. So it's a great high level, kind of a quick place to come in for investigations if you have to, or just kind of check on the status of certain fields, maybe what certain users are doing, what certain values are, results, those kinds of things. A great high level view without even having to jump into the record. So let's go ahead and now jump into the record. I've got 3 different units here that I've configured, and I just want to highlight again that this is all completely configurable. I've built this out as kind of a sample workflow, pre-production, production, and quality, but this is all completely configurable. It's not constrained to 3 by any means. I've seen 15, 20 units before. It's all very configurable in the master template builder. But today we'll go through these 3 different units as our sample production record. We'll come into pre-production, and then we've got some line clearance activities. We'll come right into the workstation line clearance. And right at the top here, we see this is kind of a next touch point on our documents module, calling back on the legacy QMS that we call QX. We can see that this document that I alluded to a minute ago at the high level view is now being referenced at this point of work. So I'm in operations, I'm coming through to do my workstation line clearance. I have my SOP linked right here, and I can even click on that. And while it loads up, I'll just talk through this here. But I can click on this, and it's basically linking now back from the documents module. And it's going to bring up that SOP right here through, in my point of work. So from an efficiency standpoint, a workflow standpoint, as an operator, I don't have to come offline and go find my document and search through a binder or, bring up a sheet of papers to go do that. My SOP is just linked right here. And it's going to be brought up right here for me in the next tab over. The other key element that Luke had mentioned in the introduction was our integrations with our training module, or our connection back to our training module. So you can see here, because it's a cloud-based system, I'm logged in as myself, as Tom Campbell. I'm logged into this URL with my credentials, and that's how I have access to this record. Now, I've signed off my trainings on this particular SOP, so I have access to execute to these steps, which I'm going to do in just a minute. However, if I were to log in as a user who had not signed off their trainings on this particular SOP, we will call this user the untrained. I'm going to jump screens for just a second. If I log in on a separate browser, now you see that I'm logged in as this user, we'll call the untrained, and we see the NX1038, this same record. I'm able to access this record in parallel. As a side note, you can have essentially an unlimited number of users accessing records in parallel or at the same time. There's essentially no limit to that number. But if I come in here now as this other user, as the untrained user, you'll see that I attempted to access this section that's governed by this SOP 04 as an example, and I'm hit with this training barrier. Basically, I have training tasks I need to take before I can actually execute to this work. Now I can either recheck my training. It'll take me directly back to that training module. I can, make sure I satisfy my criteria to sign off that training. The override is not an override for myself. There's a specific role right configuration for things like supervisors that you may grant that they can override that for things like on-the-job training. But if I was to cancel out of that, you can see that now I'm hit with this Ghostbusters barrier. I cannot execute to these steps, even if I wanted to. And therefore, mitigating me putting my untrained credentials on the record. So from a regulatory perspective, also very powerful at preventing users who are not trained on certain activities from signing off on those activities. Now I've toggled back over here to the original browser where I'm logged back in as myself again, who's dutifully signed off his trainings for SOP 04, and now I can start to execute to these steps. And you'll see that as I execute to the steps, we're calling on our theme of automatic date time, username stamping, initials, username credentials, and date and time are automatically stamped everywhere throughout MX. And so that actually aggregates to save a lot of time in a production record. There's no more signature requirements, no more date and time stamping, no more reviewing for those. at all. That's all completely done away with here in MX. We've got a question here, clean workstation. Yes, I have done that. And though on our traction of the progress theme, we see that as I'm executing the steps, I do get green check marks, so I can stay aware of where I'm at just from an immediate perspective. And then as I complete groups of steps, we'll see that kind of from a higher level in the hierarchy, we've got our green checks here as well. So that's how I know I've completed those steps, those groups of steps. I can now proceed beyond that. We can also lock down the sequence of steps based on a predecessor relationship where preceding steps have to be completed before that. I don't have that configured on these particular steps, but that is an option. So if, for example, line clearance had to be completed before setup in this case, we could certainly lock that down to force that sequence of operations. So we come into this section now called equipment selection, and this is going to be an integration example where MX has the flexibility to connect with a lot of different modules. We've seen where we can connect back to the legacy QMS through our documents and training. Here we're connecting to our equipment calibrations module. So in this example, we've got two particular balances, 457 and 082 in this demo environment. But you can imagine if you have a fleet of equipment that requires calibration, has calibration requirements, we want from a flow or from a point of work perspective in operations, we don't want to have to come offline and go look through a logbook and go look through calibration logs and make sure that they're up to date. That's non-value added activity for operations. So what we've done is we've connected the MX module to the equipment calibrations. Equipment calibrations are managed, their spec dates, due dates, their calibration activities, who it gets assigned to, all that's managed in that system. From the operations perspective in manufacturing, that information is just brought forward here for the operator. And all I have to do as an operator is determine, okay, if I see 457 is here, but it's not eligible. Again, I'm hit with the Ghostbusters because this has failed its calibration spec. It's basically out of due date for calibration. So I cannot use 457 in this record. So similar to what we're doing with training, where we're preventing untrained users from stamping their credentials on the record, we're also now preventing uncalibrated equipment from being stamped on the record. So in this case, 082 is the only particular balance in this example that I can choose. And I've done that. And now we see that additionally, the next calibration due date was also brought forward and stamped on the record automatically. I didn't have to go manually again, look for that, and then try to transcribe that value. Now, transcription risk mitigation is a whole new theme in MX that we're going to continue to see throughout the rest of the record. We're really trying to minimize human errors, transcription risk, elements related to writing, things like that. It's all non-value added activity. If we can mitigate that, we try to do that as much as we can. And we have a lot of capabilities to do that in MX. So I've completed my equipment selection. We're going to go ahead into what I've called a set point here. Again, this is all completely configurable information. I literally wrote these in here for the demonstration purposes, but this is all configurable. Our first step here is a set point ratio and a percentage. In this example, our physical limit is 25 to 30. So, we do try to integrate as much as possible where we connect MX to other systems to bring in values from those systems directly and have them automatically stamp on the record. But there may be times when you need to enter a value manually. And we have a few different ways of kind of establishing limits and restrictions around those. In this case, this is a physical limit of 25 to 30. So if I was to enter a value of, say, 24, this is an example of kind of the lightest response where we get basically a warning, but we're still allowed to complete the step. We'll see that we have kind of the most extreme example. So we've got 30 plus or minus 2. If I put in 27, you see that I'm actually prevented from completing the step at all until that value meets the spec criteria. So those are kind of the two extremes. And then we have a lot of different shades of responses in between there. We can drive things like conditional paths. So if it's out this way, then go this pathway in the steps and vice versa. We can also notify specific role groups and do other things of that nature to help control these inputs. While I'm here, actually, so I'll go ahead and update this to make sure it's within spec. We'll say 29, and now I've satisfied that criteria, so I can proceed. But I wanted to stop here as well to highlight another feature that a lot of our customers get value out of, and that's corrections. I know in the human error space, my background as a quality engineer is a lot of what I was dealing with in my experience was human errors and transcription elements and writing errors and having to correct values. Of course, on paper, that can get very messy very fast. But here in this digital space, we allow what's called the correct entry pathway. So let's say I entered 24 there. Maybe I meant to enter 27 and I accidentally entered 24. Right? We allow a pathway out of that. We have to allow pathways out of errors. So we'll go ahead and drive the correction pathway here. Let's say the value is 27. In fact, I can select a reason. And again, these are all configurable, just like most of the rest of the MX. But in this case, we'll call it unintentional completion today. I can also add a note on here explaining what happened, unintentional error, or just allowing the operator to tell the story. I'll keep the note brief here for demonstration purposes, but and you can continue to add more notes as well. You can have quality come back in and review this and then add their own notes, kind of confirming that they've seen it. We can really build on a lot of notes to kind of tell the right story here as well. But if I go ahead and hit done correcting, you see that the value gets updated to that new value. But we do not lose track of the lineage of that activity. So everything that happened there related to that change is also tracked. And we're going to see this again in the quality review at the end, and we're going to get to in just a moment. You can see all this information is kept track of, including the notes themselves, the date times for when everything happened. So we keep track of all of that content. Really a clean and comprehensive way to track corrections in the course of the workflow. So I've completed my section of steps there. We now have a verification requirement here as well. So we have the ability to layer on verification requirements in a lot of different ways. We can get granular and go down to the step level, or we can keep it high level and do just sections of the record, or both and anywhere in between. In this case, I'm doing a verification on just these two particular steps. And a couple notes here. So as I mentioned, it's all cloud-based. So I'm logged into this record as my username as Tom Campbell. Now, a lot of our customers will use tablets or maybe laptops at the point of work on the line. So let's say I'm on a tablet here today and my supervisor, we'll call him Steve, is maybe nearby, and I need Steve's sign off to verify this work. So I put these inputs in, and then I'm going to come to Steve and say, hey, Steve, can you double check this work and then sign off this verification? Now, in this example, Steve has the flexibility to either come right over to my tablet or my terminal and input his credentials here, or he can also log in as his own login separately if he's on a laptop, maybe himself, and access the record that way. But from a workflow efficiency perspective, he doesn't have to do that. He can just come right to my flow of work. His name is Steve Campbell, by the way. We'll go ahead and put in his credentials here, and then he can sign off and verify my flow of work directly into my laptop, and then I can proceed from there. So just kind of another example of streamlining the workflow efficiency here. So completed what we called our set point. We'll come into the section called materials. And what we have is our table functionality. So what we see with a lot of customers on paper is to manage things like tables, it's basically repeated or excessively printed pages of blank cells, allowing for the eventuality that those cells may get populated. But with our digital flexibility here in MX, we approach it from the reverse, where we build up our tables just one row at a time and essentially iterate the activities only as we need. So we don't have to cross off blank cells and sign off as not applicable. We don't have to do any of that. We just build the tables as we need. So we'll go ahead and start our first row, and I think this will become a little more apparent as we go. We do have some other functionalities here. We're going to kind of continue the tour of some of the different functionalities to manage inputs in case we cannot integrate and we need to manually input values. We can do things like multiple choice to kind of limit the risk of varying values coming in. We can also give suggested entries. So of course, this information is not the kind of thing you'd want to have team members transcribing. So we can go ahead and select those. We have the ability to govern an expiration date. So if I enter a date prior to the current date here, I'm hit with this warning as well as a configurable note on how to proceed from there. And then I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here and cover another example of integrations. Now, we've talked about integrations a little bit already with things like our equipment calibrations form, kind of bringing in the calibration spec requirements. This is an example that maybe reflects connection to something like an ERP or maybe a LIMS, or some other system where you're pulling in information from another database and you want to get that information stamped right on the record here in the flow of work. So what I've got here is a lot number step. And then I'm going to go ahead and enter a lot number for a particular component. And what's going to come in here, you see that we have these child dependent steps through this integration. So we've got a vendor description, expiration date, and quantity. Again, this is all completely configurable, but in this example, what's going to effectively happen is I'm going to scan for this lot number. And what this is doing is it's going to go out to, you can imagine maybe an ERP or a resource software. it's going to pull in key information, this descriptive information about that product, and then pull that and stamp it back on this record automatically. So I don't have to go out and transcribe that information. I don't have to. There's no risk of me, erroring in that transcription. It all happens automatically. While I'm going to show this, I'm actually going to talk through barcode scanning as well. So with MX, we always advocate for barcode scanning wherever possible. I do have a Bluetooth barcode scanner here, and then I've got just a sample packaging with a 1D barcode on it. MasterControl can take 1 and 2D barcodes straight away, and it can also be configured to read QR codes as well. So if you're using a tablet with a camera, we can configure QR codes as well, configure the interpretation of QR codes. But in this case, if I'm going to go ahead and turn my scanner on, and sometimes this takes just a second for it to turn on and get connected. After it gets connected, yeah, so I think we've got it there. So now you can see I scan that value in off of this packaging, and what's happening now is MasterControl is going out to this integrated system, and it's going to find these values based on the previous integration configuration and pull those values back in here. So you can see all these values were brought in automatically. Again, we're just in a demo environment, but these there's a lot of power with integrations in terms of mitigating transcription risk, and streamlining the workflow, saving a lot of time in operations, as well as being able to automatically update things like inventory management systems, because we can feed integrations kind of in both directions. So it can either, MX can receive from the integrated system, and it can also push values back. So maybe if we consumed 30 today in this quantity, for an example, we could push that back to an inventory management system, and then that could automatically deduct from there. So a lot of powerful functionalities that's saving tons of time and transcription risk, non-value added transcription risk in the flow of work. So I went ahead and completed that first row. You can see that now our table has started to populate with this first row. We've got our headers here. It's in a condensed view just for the purposes of, so that we can see as much information as possible. But to iterate this table, I would just start my second row and build up. But there's no more signing off of unused rows and anything of that nature. So we'll come into the second unit called production, continuing a little bit of the tour of some of the different functionalities that we have in MX. I've called this process time, and we have the ability to we're getting to a section of the record where we're going to start to do some various calculations, again, automatically happening. So we're not doing any sort of arithmetic or calculations by hand. In this case, we're doing a process start and end time. You can see that we can track durations on that time. In this case, 10 seconds elapsed here. So I didn't have to do any math to do that. We can also lace on duration limits. Sorry for the highlight there, but we can lace on duration limits as well. Let me just zoom in a little bit more. To establish things like range requirements, or maybe a target time, things have to go at least 30 minutes or between 4 and 6 hours or anything of that nature. We can get as granular as you need with those controls around time. Come into this sample collection called the sample volumes, but this could be anything. It doesn't have to be milliliters or volumes. What I want to highlight here is as I enter values in, you'll see that this calculation down here that we've built up is going to start to automatically port in those values and then do the arithmetic for us automatically. So, and then if I put in, let's say 300 there, we'll see that this arithmetic happened automatically. I didn't have to manually do any of this math. I'm an engineer by background. I still type very basic calculations into my phone or any available calculator whenever possible, because I just don't trust myself to do arithmetic. And you're making highly sophisticated products. It's silly to lose on arithmetic is how I look at that. So we try to really minimize things like arithmetic and transcription errors wherever possible. I want to stop here also just to highlight that, we've seen an example of some integrations and how we can pull in values from other systems. It would be possible to execute activities like this entirely automated by just a trigger button, essentially. We could pull these values in from maybe gauges or scales that you have in the lab or online, and then pull those values in and have calculations execute on those automatically. So this entire section could basically be automated with essentially no human risk involved. We can get a lot more complex than this, than additions as well. Just to highlight, we have full scientific functionality for things like logs, natural logs, exponents, those types of things, to build out calculations as complex as your process requires. We can also pull in values from throughout the record. So you see that we're pulling values in from just these 3 preceding steps, but we can make our calculations pull in values from throughout the record as well for things like reconciliations. Maybe you want to pull in values from an earlier stage in the record. We can pull those in as well. It's highly dynamic in what we can pull from in the calculation. So go ahead and complete this section, and we're coming to the end here. Then we're going to take a look at our quality review for a minute, go through that process. But we can also attach file types. So a lot of our customers have the requirement to either take pictures of elements of the process, if it's cleaned equipment, or maybe it's the final label affixed to the product as an example. rather than have to print that out and put it on page 98 of the paper packet, we can now just either browse for that file, or we can capture an image. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and browse here, and it should just load up. I don't know. We've got some. We'll call this label a TXT file here. That it's file type agnostic, so we can attach that file, any file type we need right here, and it creates a link to that as well. And we'll see this again here when we go through the quality review in just a minute. Okay, we're going to come to our last section that I've called quality. We just have a couple of basic checks here. Component A inspection, let's say that passes, and then maybe component B fails. Again, we can tighten up this response as we need. In this case, I've got kind of a light response with an instruction for the team to take care of. So go ahead and complete that section. And now, looking back at our theme of traction of the progress, we've got our green check marks all the way down. And if I was going to come back out here, you would see that now our record is at data complete and at 100%. But it has not been released yet. We have one key big piece left to do, and that's to review the record for release. So what we've gone through here so far is I'm in operations. I've gone through here and I've executed. My point of work is executing to these steps all the way down, and I've gone through it. I've done that. Now we're basically at the stage where the record has to be released or reviewed for release. And where we do that is in what we call this review by exception view here. So now you can imagine I'm now in quality, or whoever's releasing records at your organization. I need to review the record for release. Now in paper, we see with a lot of our customers is they have to review the record line by line and go through, make sure all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted, date times are in place, the initials are all signed off, there are no blank steps, all of that very tedious activity. And this section right here is where we see our customers save, in some cases weeks, and in many cases days worth of time, because we can really cut down that review process. Now in the review by exception view, so I'm in quality, I'm coming in here to review the record. In this view, I just have to review the things that either went wrong, or maybe the things that we have decided need special attention in the record. I don't have to go through line by line and check off every single thing in the record anymore. So what we can see is that we've got these tiles here right off the top. I've got steps corrected, pass fail actions, attachments, and limits exceeded. We didn't attach any notes or forms here today, but if we take a look at, let's say, the steps corrected, we'll notice, you may recall that we changed this step from 24 to 27. All that same lineage for that activity is tracked right here, and it's ported forward to now my point of work in quality, which is just this review by exception dashboard. I didn't have to go find this step in the record. It's brought forward for me right here. Similar with the pass fail actions, these are all drop downs, so they'll show up right here. We've got this component B failed. Maybe I'm not satisfied with this response. I don't see any additional comments. So I can still drive my follow-up in this case with this user. But I can still drive my follow-ups. I just do it from this view rather than have to go through the tedium of line by line trying to find where those are in the record. Then attachments too, I can see I've got this linked file here. I can click on this link, it'll open that file as well. So I don't have to go find that label. Really, again, our themes are streamlining the workflow, saving as much time as possible, mitigating transcription errors, the chances of somebody forgetting things. We're really cutting out all of that in the course of the work. So once I've gone through my reviews, if I'm satisfied, I can accept and release the record here with my credentials, or I can reject it if maybe there's something critically wrong with the record, and it goes down that pathway as well. I do want to highlight here that if the record was not at 100% complete, so we got to 100% data complete today, but if I had forgotten a step, these fields would be grayed out. We'd be hit with the Ghostbusters again that we've seen, blocking several other functionalities. And that's governing, basically, it's forcing us to get the record to 100% complete before we can complete that record. So really powerful functionality, really simple but powerful functionality at preventing us from releasing records incomplete. I know a lot of our customers have grievances about the process of reviewing records and forgetting to, overlooking one particular step and then releasing a record with one field empty, and that creates a lot of regulatory hassle down the line. Okay, so that's it. We've gone through that's it for the production record lifecycle here that we've gone through today. We've gone through the creation, we've gone through the execution of those steps, and then we've gone through our quality review and release at the end. I've been seeing the chat and the Q&A kind of coming through, and I think maybe now is a good time to address those.
Yeah, and I'm happy to hop in here and talk about those for a second, if you want.
Yeah.
Some of the questions, a lot of them have been around integrations with label printers or labeling technology, integrations with ERP, LIMS, And just at a high level, I think it's important to highlight for the group that anything that and everything that has a signal and an API can be integrated into the EBR that we're talking about here. So MasterControl has an API. Most other systems have an API. We also have integrations that can be done through connectivity ports like an RS-232 port or Bluetooth. There's various different types of ways to get the data. If you have a SCADA system or an OPC, there's various different types of platforms or systems that are in place that we can and do integrate to be able to pull that data in. Just like Tom demonstrated with the barcode scanner when he scanned that 2D barcode, could be a good example of how you'd pull in information off of a label. The integration with an ERP, we could be able to pull the lot number and information, and then we can also backflush information that goes back into your ERP for inventory information. So that's a lot of what the questions were around. And there was a question that, Tom, maybe you could take a bite at, just making sure that when you are bringing in information off a barcode scanner, is there any parameter around expired inventory that you could be able to prevent someone from using something that was expired within MasterControl? You address that one?
Yeah, so we can configure the integration to. We looked at, I think, we saw an example of the expiration date functionality, and that was kind of for a manual entry in the demonstration. But we can configure that on for an integration as well. A kind of analogous to that, I'm seeing another question about limits. Notices allowed on calculations if out of expected calculation. So I think that's going to answer that question as well. We can also put on kind of the similar spec ranges that we saw for numeric entries being manually entered. We can also put those on the calculation results and then drive pathways there. So if the result is, because we have a lot of customers that have things like reconciliations or yields, and they certainly want to be notified if the yield is out of spec or is not performing as needed. So we can do that with both expiration dates and with numeric calculations.
Sure.
That are coming in from integrations as well.
So there's some question about releasing. I don't know if you see that in the chat, Tom.
Multiple users allowed to release. I see that question, and that's certainly the case. So it's everything really. All access in MasterControl is roles based. So those are decisions that you'll make in the configuration process. Basically, from an org structure perspective, who needs to be in which roles, and then which roles have which rights to access elements of the system. So in this case, for release, in fact, we can see right here, this is actually a good screen to be on. I know this kind of looks like a lot of nothing here, but this is technically the role that's authorized to release the records in this particular master template. So I am in this role, and there are others in this role as well. So if you wanted to lock it down to specific users, you may just create a role for that one user and that kind of a thing. But it's all roles based and who is in that role in terms of what governs who can sign off records.
You don't have an example of a deviation under forms, but there was a question that you could asking if you could see if the deviation is open or closed, and the answer is yes. When you click on that form section, if there was one that was still open, you'd see a visual indicator both on a color. That would be yellow versus green. Tom's going through and he's going to launch a form and then forward to the review by exception. So this is how you do it in real time, that the form would be launched. And then when you go into the review by exception, it will be adorned to that section in the record, but you can go directly there. So where it was 0 on forms, now there's 1. And you can drop down there and see that it's yellow over there on the right-hand side, as well as a snippet of the link to where that form is that could be accessed, as well as where it is in the status.
Yep, absolutely.
The other question, they'd like to see a final full record. So the PDF view of what that would look like.
Sure. And sorry, Luke, just on the forms as well, I wanted to mention that we can configure this so that it does, just to confirm, that it can prevent the sign off until this form itself is complete. So it's in this yellow state, as Luke mentioned, initiation. You can configure it so that you cannot release this record. It's kind of similar to how we cannot release the record if it's not 100% data complete with all the fields. We can also prevent release of the form of the record until any associated forms are complete as well. But yeah, so let's see the PDF. Let's go ahead and look at the production record PDF here. Let me just take a moment to publish. But it does publish this as well, and we could publish a blank version of this as well. So it's, if you have the master template and you just want to take a look at the master template, in fact, as you're going through revision changes, you'll use a blank version of that to review those changes. But if you have the requirement to send this out to customers, sorry, I think my Wi-Fi is just a little bit slow here, but basically it's pulling in all these values in this format as well. We can also redact the PDF. So if you wanted to only send certain sections of the record to customers, maybe a lot of this is not value added for your customers, but you had specific key fields you wanted to send, we can also do that as well.
Great. There's a question that says, where are review by exceptions being documented, or are any corrections as a result of the reviews?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, good question. So review by exception is documented on the course of the production record itself. So this activity here is a part of this particular production record. This is not a separate component. It's a separate screen, but it's related to this particular production record. So the activities there will all be associated with this lot number that we're on, in this case, NX1038. Any changes that may need to happen, so that would be typically through the correction pathway. So if we had changes that we needed to make, we can always come back into the record here. And in fact, a lot of our customers will do that. If it's, hey, something in production, on process time, I didn't like something in here, we can try the correction pathway here. Those corrections will all be tracked just in the same lineage that we saw with the sample correction that we went through a little while ago. So it's all tracked. I guess the high level is it's all tracked on this lot number here.
The value is the review by exceptions gives you a summary, and you can take a dive back into the production record rather than having to go line by line and searching for it. It brings it to the surface, and then the corrections are actually made in the batch record. There was a question on non-conformance module. The non-conformance is actually a form as part of our quality management module, which is natively integrated into MasterControl's EBR. So similar to what you saw with the deviation, it would be the same thing on the non-conformance form if you had something that was out of spec. There's a question there. What does the rejection pathway entail? The batch record had a critical error.
Yeah, so I guess a couple notes, right? The status here, I guess the first item is we've got our status here that updates. In this case, we have not released this yet, so it's still at data complete 100%. If I was to sign this off and reject it, this status would change to closed and rejected. And then basically this record would get archived at that point. Now, it is possible to resurrect a rejected record, but that requires a certain approval pathway that you could configure on to allow for you to kind of resurrect those rejected. So let's say maybe you re-reviewed it and realized it actually didn't need to be rejected. There is a pathway to kind of resurrect that out, but that requires some configuration with the right approvals, right stakeholders to sign off on that process.
Yep. The question of the languages, we have our software available in 7 languages, and yes, Spanish is one of them. So you can have this available in Spanish.
So I'm going to take a risk. I don't speak Spanish, but I'm going to go ahead and see if I can navigate my way back out of this. But anyway, yeah, you see the various languages that I had available, and that changes all the menu items. So it will change all the menu items related to MasterControl here as well. That you can see kind of throughout the user view. It does not translate your content, so it won't go in and like Google Translate all of the specific content. That would need to be translated as you input those specific instructions to operators, that sort of thing. But all of the menu items in here could be translated. And that's all based on the user view, so that doesn't change it globally for your site. That's specific to my interface as I log in. So you can have a lot of different users with a lot of different languages, all using the same system.
So here's a question that I have never been asked before, but I'm going to throw it to you, Tom, in case you have. Considering how configurable MX is, our customers who implement MX typically validate at GAMP level 4 or 5?
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that one specifically. I know a lot of our customers I think are at GAMP at all levels. Yeah, if I would need to follow up to give you a more specific and more accurate answer there, but I know we have a lot of our customers are at all different GAMP levels,
Sure.
At least that I've come across.
Yeah, I think that's something that I'd want to unpack a little bit further. Our system certainly is a fully validated system.
Yeah.
So I think you could rest assured that you're within that purview. That addresses all the questions that we have. So I don't know if you want to finish up where you were or pivot to something beyond what you talked about, Tom.
Well, I think that's all of what I wanted to cover through today. We basically went through the life cycle of the production record from the creation to the release. Yeah, any other questions? It looks like maybe there's one more that just came through.
Yeah, on the feedback rate, we can follow up on that one.
Okay.
Well, great.
There's.
I mean, we typically come to the end of the call and have Q&A. Looks like there's another one here. What is the process for transitioning the paper batch records to electronic forms? Tom, you've done that quite a bit.
Sure. Yeah, I do want to speak through that. So it's what we call our implementation process. Typically, the way that works is you will be assigned a project manager and an implementation consultant. In fact, like Luke mentioned, that's what I've done for a lot of my career here at MasterControl was implementation with customers. Typically, they'll come on site with you for maybe 3 or 4 days, or handle it virtually potentially if that works better. But they'll basically take you through the master template builder training and how to build those records. That's usually only a couple of hours, and then they'll actually help you go live with your first record, and they'll kind of hold your hand all the way through the go live with that first record. And then, of course, we have services that if you want to have more of your records built out, we can certainly do that for you as well. But really the idea with the master template builder is that it's very easy to use. We try to make that training as fast and as easy as possible. And typically what I've seen with customers is they can learn how to use it in a couple of hours, and then they have their own team start to build those records basically right away. And some have even said that it's fun to use. So it's usually pretty fast, the training process there.
And then the question, we currently use a different MES. Can we import any existing data?
And yes, yeah, definitely. So through integrations, we've seen a couple of examples of integrations there as well. So we would basically, anywhere that there is an endpoint in a database, we can basically connect with that endpoint. So if you have a different MES and it's storing values in its own database, and you want to pull those values into MX, we could certainly do that. We have a lot of customers that do that sort of thing all the time.
And maybe to pivot off that question, if the question is, can you take your existing records that would be in your current MES and bring them over? There would need to be a build in the MasterControl software to be able to have that batch record specific, but you could use that data if you wanted to port it over, save it or share it. That is definitely something that can be done. Typically, through the implementation process, there's a strategy that we work with on a specific individual case-by-case basis to ensure that you keep all the legacy information you have and can move forward with MasterControl. The pricing based on modular user accounts. Pricing is based on user licensing. As we've talked about, it's a cloud-based SaaS solution, and we determine the pricing based on named users. Tom just touched on it briefly, but the different type of licenses in our EBR is a master batch record builder license as well as an operator license. Anybody who's entering data into the batch record template or operating against a release batch record, including QC, would need to have his or her own user license. And that's something that we can do to help build out with that, what a quote would look like for you. And so certainly appreciate the engagement. Thank you guys for typing in your chat and asking questions. Really appreciate, Tom, you walking us through this batch record demo. We certainly would love to be able to work with anybody who is interested. We have a full ROI analysis if you wanted to go through it. That kind of stems off the question on pricing. A lot of times people have to build the financial justification. And so part of a role of our sales team is to help walk through that process, looking at your current state and analyzing line by line what the costs are currently, and then what it would look like at a future projected cost with the implementation of MasterControl. And then we could do a side-by-side comparison to be able to evaluate, is there an ROI and what's the break-even point and how long will it take? And typically speaking, it's about a 6 or 7 month break-even point with a tremendous ROI, like I showed in the slides at the beginning of the presentation, where you could see immediate results, and with the flexibility and configurability of MX and how quick you can implement it, you can start realizing those right away with moving off of paper to a digital system. that can continue to expound into other integrations like an ERP or a LIMS or bringing in label printing or the data entry. So it can continue to develop. But our goal is to establish a partnership with our customers and really look at the solutions or the problems that you have with solutions that we offer and come together with an opportunity. So if that's of any interest, certainly here's our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to MasterControl. We'd love to schedule a further conversation based on the demo that we saw today and determine what your specific needs are and unpack the value that we offer and determine if there's something further we can do for you. So thanks for everybody's time, and we'll conclude the webinar.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody.